Welcome, everybody, back to the Denver Dzogchen podcast. Happy Halloween. This is a very special episode where Joe and I are going to talk a little bit about Halloween in the sense we're going to talk about fear. Fear is such an important part of the path. It's something none of us really care for. But I know for myself that I would not be where I am or practicing the Dharma if it wasn't for fear. It plays a major role. And it's something that we not only embrace in the Vajrayana, but we actually invite. So there's a whole lot to talk about. Welcome, Joe. Maybe you can kind of give your first impressions and thoughts about fear in the path.
Thank you, Damien, and welcome everyone. So happy to be here on this Halloween week, 2025, and thinking about something that has definitely, as Damien said, I think if it weren't for fear, we would not be part of the Dharma, and probably auspicious to start with a quote from Milarepa, because Milarepa is the king of overcoming fear. Wow. He said, "I went to the mountains because I was afraid of death. And in the mountains, I found the fortress of the deathless." And I think this is a nice encapsulation of Buddhism in general. I've been reading a book, I'll show it. It's called The Island, in reverse there, which is a anthology of Buddha's teachings on Nibbana. It's from the Theravada perspective. It's a free book. You can find it online as a PDF. The Island. And there's all these quotes about nirvana in which he talks about it as he even calls it, the Buddha himself calls it the deathless. And I think that that is what we're doing in our Dharma practice, right? The fact is, the first thing everybody thinks, like, I don't have any fear. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of, but actually, the tonality of our entire lives is driven. They often say driven by hope and fear, but hope and fear are fear. They're only one thing. So I think acknowledging this is the first step on the Dharma path. So I'm so grateful that you brought this up as a topic.
Yeah, it all starts with the acknowledgement of death, right? Like for me, that was just like from a very young age. It was like, before I do this life thing, I should probably understand what the point is if I'm going to just die. And that question just haunted me. It's like I can't start doing this thing until I know, why I should. If I'm going to drop off and die, then what's the point of anything? Buddhism has a lot of answers to that question. And basically, they say that there isn't a point to this, not in the sense that like an inherent meaning to life, which some of the eternalist traditions have, more like it is what you make of it with the kind of bodhicitta motivation and love and concern for others. But also not taking this seriously and recognizing it to be the ephemeral, dreamlike thing it is, and not something we should be so invested in. And death just keeps that. The more we keep death in the mind, the more we will be reminded. I think you shared recently on one of our podcasts that quote from Paltrul Rinpoche about how we should think of death at all times. This really brings you right into the present and right into the essence of the path. And I know that for myself, the progress I've made has been directly linked to fear, because my first real start on the path happened when my father died unexpectedly. And then I had a second round when my brother died unexpectedly, and I had started having these panic attacks and some kind of health concern where I was having like brain fog, confusion. And I would have these like feeling like I was dying for like an hour or two every morning for years, for probably 2-3 years. I had this almost every day, at least a couple of times a week, where I had to just sit in full terror. And I learned to like ride that because I had to. I didn't know what else to do. At first, it was like completely overwhelming. And I was so threatened by it because I didn't know what was happening. I'd like literally the first time I thought my friend had dosed me with mushrooms. I'm not kidding. I thought I was on hallucinogens because that's what it felt like to me. My heart was pounding and the world felt like a dream, and I felt very like strange. I still to this day don't fully understand what happened. But very terrifying experience. But the more I got to know what it was, I was like, okay, this is just fear, and I'm just going to have to ride it. And I would just, like I'd be able to stay in presence, but that didn't make the fear in my body calm down, right? So my mind wasn't thinking anything. I wasn't thinking about death or fear or anything, but my body was still in terror. And this was a good practice run for what it's probably like to die. For me, is like, you can't escape the fear. But I also recognized I needed to make some changes in my life, and it made me go deeper into the Dharma. So I've recognized that fear was a blessing, right? There's a blessing from the guru pushing me further and further down the path. And in so many ways, when we do like protector practice, this is what I think of them as. Like, they're these things we don't want to deal with and we don't care for, but we recognize that they serve a major function on pushing us on the path, and that the more we offer to them, the more we're asking them to bring this kind of thing into our life, to bring trouble that shoves us down the path when we wouldn't do it willingly. Because the truth is, when we're comfortable, we don't change.
Well said. I have nothing to say to that. That's amazing. Yeah. Your experience of having this death pushed in your face and having that be the catalyst for a renewed aspect of your spiritual life is common to everybody. Everybody on the path seems to come to that through this realization. If we think what happened to the Buddha, right? He's living in this palace. He's got all these consorts. He's got a queen. He's got kids. He's beautiful. He's perfect for the time. He's loving it. And then he goes out and he sees the four sights, right? What are they? Birth, old age, sickness, and death. And it was death that he was like, wait a minute, this is going to happen. And seeing that like a brick wall, that we're approaching that brick wall at all times really makes you, reestablish yourself in this moment, as you said, which is great when you are a practitioner. But even if you're not a practitioner, it makes you think, what am I doing? What is the goal here? Because you realize that all goals, whether they are to keep your yard looking really nice or get a PhD or travel to Africa, they all are incredibly superficial in a certain sense. Even really nice and interesting goals like raise a family or, be a good person in your community. All this stuff is wonderful. And I'm not saying we shouldn't try to do it at every minute, but it all fits, it's all right here. Well, the fact of life and death is the issue, right? In many Zen retreats, the first thing they say when you start the sesshin, the 7-day practice, is this is the great matter of birth and death. And then what you're doing, right? You're coming to this moment and realizing that this body is not going to last. This personality based on this body is also not going to last. What is going to last? And it's that starts us on this process. And this is specifically about death, but the energy behind it is fear. Fear is a fear of change, a fear of loss primarily. And I know from my perspective that so much of my life is driven by fear, whether I acknowledge it or not. The more I'm able to acknowledge it, the more I'm able to let go of it. So I think the first thing that we have to encourage our listeners to do is to do a little contemplation. Many people, even heavy Vajrayana practitioners, they did the Nundro, they're doing their Yidam stuff, but they haven't even really, who of us have really taken to heart the fact that this might be our last day. Just like Paltrul Rinpoche said, as soon as you really think about that, everything does have, just as you experienced in the what you just shared with us, a kind of almost psychedelic experience, feeling of clarity and immediateness and almost unreality, simply based on the fact that this is happening. Whatever other things have happened and what is going to happen, this is happening. And I think that, the spiritual path can only start from right now. So in this way, fear can really be our friend if we don't, use all our secret techniques to push it away.
Yeah. I had a friend who was kind of struggling with some kind of sex addiction, and he went to one of my lamas, and the lama said, you need to go sit in a cemetery every day. And so this facing of death can really get us out of things. And I've experienced this in my own life, that when we're stuck with a habit or a problem, that because we're grasping at experience and grasping at life, that this getting in touch with the fear is really what we're trying to get around, right? Like, we grasp at these pleasures because they kind of dull the feeling of constant anxiety that we all have. There's just that all pervasive discomfort, which is the last kind of suffering that most of us who are on the path, that's the thing we got in touch with, right? Nothing is okay. Nothing works out. You can look through history. How many good people do you think lived, like you were saying, like who did amazing things with their life that will never know their name and no one will ever know they existed? What did it amount to? Even if they fed 100 people, those 100 people got hungry again. Like these things that when we really look at the nature of samsara and conditioned existence, there's no way to fix it. And there's no way to do it perfectly. That it started for me. I read Stephen Levine's books, and he writes, about death and going through this. He has an amazing book where you do a practice of a year to live. I highly recommend it. Yeah. And so I did it when I used to do coaching too. The first thing I would ask people to do is say, okay, if you have 3 years to live, what will you do with your life? If you have 1 year to live, what would you do with your life? If you had 3 months to live, what would you do with your life? All the way down to the present, right? Do you have 3 minutes? These sort of things really clarify when people, a lot of times they spend their time going, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I don't know what's important. This sort of practice will really completely clarify that for you. And like what I found was at first it was like, I need to do something important with my life, right? Like I need to do something and make something of myself and serve the world and all of these things. But then I realized like all these problems would come up with even trying to do that, and realized there was still like this ego fixation in that, and realized that there was still a fundamental fear or a try to immortalize myself, right? Like a lot of the monstrosity egos we see in the world right now, that's what they're trying to do, is immortalize themselves by making changes to the world. And we can see that this causes tremendous problems. So over time, I subtly and finally realized, like Gandhi said, when I was young, I was ambitious and wanted to change the world. But when I was old, I was wise and I wanted to change myself. And that's really what it boiled down to, was like, it's just this path. It's just the clarification of this mind and this karma. And that's all really that I could really be concerned with. Everything else is a little bit of a distraction from that. And everything else is impermanent. And even my karma is, of course, impermanent, but that's a path I can keep going forward on, even beyond death, because it's really based in the mind.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, I think that because death is the sort of fundamental fear, separation from our own physical body and everyone we know and all that stuff, then it's easy to, I mean, even in this conversation, you can see we're leaning away from fear and toward death, something we can kind of like deal with. Fear is hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Fear is like very, very powerful. And I think it is almost the tonality of our lives. I know it is in my life, even though my life is pretty together right this moment, that even when things are good, you're full of worry and anxiety that they're going to change. Oh, my business is going to fall apart. My friends are going to leave me. My relationship's going to collapse. I'm going to get sick. You see it all the time, and you can't help but have that. So I think as a practical way of approaching this, I think the first thing to do I need to do for myself and invite others to do if they feel like it, is to recognize just how much fear actually plays a role in our lives. I mean, even something as basic as looking in the refrigerator and being like, oh, we're out of almond milk. There's a subtle like, I got to do something about this. I got to try to get this situation under control. And what we tend to do, or what I should say, I tend to do, because this is not psychology. I'm not a psychologist. This is Dharma stuff and how we can get into our own experience of the world in a way that'll be more beneficial than we normally do. You got to take a break. You got to take a moment and be like, wait, what is it that's driving my immediate want to jump in the car and go to the store and fix this problem? Because I've got a real fix this problem kind of attitude in my life. I'm not sorry about that. It does work in terms of keeping things going, but it's also very distracting, If we can just take a moment, whether that's, hooking that with your breath is what people recommend. I think that works. Just one breath in and one breath out and be like, what's actually doing this? It almost always boils down to fear. Fear of loss, fear of lack, fear of not living up, whatever it happens to be, depending on how, sophisticated the problem in front of you is. If it's something like, I don't have enough almond milk, I'm just like, I can get my hands on the situation. But I think that what fear really comes from is a lack of acknowledgement that we can't get our hands on any part of the situation. I cannot prolong my life from this moment until, for one more hour. I cannot do anything. to do that, right? I can just keep hoping and keep going and hoping that this breathing and this eating and this podcast stuff will keep me alive. But really, it's I think most of my fear comes from not acknowledging how little I can actually control my life.
Yeah. Resting in the chaos. That's the big one for me, is the fear of like long-term illness, right? Because I'm always like, I can fix everything, right? I'm good at fixing stuff. I'm the same personality that I have to fix things, have everything buttoned down. I'm proactive. I deal with things before they're a problem. But if I were to be told you have cancer or whatever, that would break me, because I know that I wouldn't be able to fix it. Like, you would just be like this thing, you can try all these health things, but it's so anxiety producing, this constant, and it's just as you're saying, we have to learn to rest in the mess. We have to allow the chaos to be here, because it is, and it's the illusion of control. The movie Fight Club is about this, right? Like, let go of all of these illusion of control, like have everything buttoned down, live in this perfect condo, have everything held together, and then boom, it all falls apart, which is of course going to happen. So how do we learn to let go and live without rushing to buy the almond milk, without letting things fall apart a little bit, right? For this like personality, this is what retreat's really good for, is an opportunity to not deal with the other stuff, to just stop having to, like, because we can really distract ourselves with that, with the constant maintenance.
Yeah, and since part of this podcast is practical application, ideas of how to practically apply what we're talking about in your life, the main thing during the day as practitioners is to slow down and take a break. You've got to take a break. Whenever you feel like I got to do this, that's a sign that there's some fear there. And if you just can acknowledge it, even you don't have to do anything. That's what the thing, this is a real Dzogchen perspective, but it's true. You do not have to do anything. You don't have to shoot the fear down with a shotgun. You don't have to liberate it in some sort of a hong pei kind of way. You can just acknowledge that it's there. And in that acknowledgement of just letting there be some space, it will liberate itself. Not permanently, because fear has two aspects, right? It has the psychological aspect. This is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and then all of a sudden your body responds. That's the difference between a thought and an emotion, in a sense, right? They're the same thing, except emotions have a physical effect. Just like you were talking about, your heart starts pounding, which of course makes your mind go crazy. And you're like, oh my God, I'm having an attack. And then that makes your heart beat harder. And all of a sudden you're perspiring all over the place and shaking, and you feel paralyzed. I mean, this is a classic. It's the back and forth between the thoughts cause the feelings in the body. Feelings cause more thoughts, and all of a sudden you're in a kind of like explosion. It's not that we can stop that process, but we can gain a little distance, which is really what the Dharma is about, right? It's about not being so immediately reactive to everything. It's about taking a break, having some space, being that part of ourselves which is already separate from the situation, not the contents of the mind, but the container, the openness, the awareness aspect. And this we can practice anytime, because fear is pervasive, right? You start to feel thirsty. There's a sense of like, oh my God, they say you got to be hydrated, 8 glasses of water. There's this thing, even if it never gets that far, because you're already on your way to the sink. You know what I mean? On your way to the carafe, whatever. If you can just take a moment and be like, oh, here it is again. Little bit of space. It doesn't necessarily mean, like you said, that the physical, you can be a good practitioner, recognize the view or whatever, and still have your heart pounding out of control. That has to do with body chemistry. We have to learn how to do just what you said. You have to ride that wave. You have to be like that, And even, this popular 2 movies that came out of the Dune movies. He even talks about that. Fear is like a wind, and when it comes up, you have to batten down the hatches, and that wind is mostly a physical thing. So if we can make that separation, which is like an instantaneous thing of just like, aha, here you go again, and then not grab on and try to fix the situation like you and I are so into, like most people. Anybody who's got their life together, part of it is fixing the situation. Problem comes up, you're on top of it. It doesn't mean we don't do that. That is an effective way to live. It's necessary. Our lives are complex. What it means is The problem comes up, we're going to do that, but without jerking toward it, we take a moment. Oh, yeah. And then in that moment, the space appears. And it's in that space that the liberation occurs. It doesn't necessarily mean the problem goes away. It doesn't necessarily mean the heart stops beating like crazy, or even that all the thoughts don't still go. Because the thoughts are connected to the biology of the body and all this stuff. We're very complex. Don't worry about that stuff. Just that tiny bit of space. And in that space, you realize I am not my thoughts. I am not my pounding heart. And there's a tiny bit of liberation. And that does cause the physical to relax a little bit, even if it doesn't go right away. At least this is my experience. Whether I can do it consistently is another matter.
Yeah, this brings up a few things for me. Number one, so that's, to me, that's green Tara, right? Green Tara's energy is the energy of riding the fear with awareness. She's got the one foot down. She's ready to come do whatever needs to be done. She'll save you, save whoever, but she does that all without losing that presence, right? Like that's the quality that's different. Like you're saying, that we can still have the fear, we can still have the needs to do the things, but we're not detached from the awareness of our true nature, so that we're not completely caught up and being swept away. It also reminds me of a couple other things. One is the movie Batman Begins, when he does his training with Ra's al Ghul, and he takes the hallucinogen to make himself experience terror. And they do a very good job cinematically showing like the way that your vision shakes and the way that everything appears like more evil than it is. But he like calms himself sufficiently to then do what he needs to do in the midst of the fear. It doesn't go away. He's still got the drug pumping through his veins. This is how we have to deal with it. I think like John F. Kennedy was right. It's the fear of fear really that's causing most of our problems. Fear itself it's protecting us. It's warning us that there's danger, compelling us to do what we need to do to keep this organism going. So we can like say thank you to fear. Yeah, like fear is there to help us, but sometimes that fear is responding to something we have no control over. And in those cases, we have to, like Thich Nhat Hanh, talk to our fear like a baby and say, I see you, fear. It's okay, but I don't need you right now. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing we can do about this. If we were to get existential fear, you would be in a constant state of terror, because we know that the hammer can drop at any time. And we're all, just like you said, riding the precipice of that. And really, there's a practice designed for this, and that is Chöd, right? So in Chöd, we call up our fears intentionally. And the times that I practiced this in a more serious way, I had an amazing situation where you start to recognize, like you read Machik's explanation of what are the signs of accomplishment? They're all the things that we normally say are things going terrible, right? Your things fall apart. You see evil animals, you experience fear, anger, eruptions, right? This means that the demons you called in this practice to feed are showing up. And when I did that practice, it completely turned my life on its head, because suddenly all the things, I was like, oh, this is a good sign. And, so these things that I normally would have been very upset about suddenly were like helping me. So you can see the Dharma has all these amazing tools to really help us work with this situation that we're all in.
Well said. Yeah. And for those interested in Chöd, there are complex, medium, and very simple ways to do it. And so I encourage people to look for the simple ways first and not think, oh, I got to get a special drum and I got a special conlang like bone trumpet and I got to learn that stuff is not the essence of Chöd. The essence Chöd means to cut, right? Same as Trek Chöd and our meditation. And what it really means is allowing that moment of fear to arise and letting there be space there in which the fear can liberate and be seen as not you, not you. Because we feel I'm going to get destroyed, but the very essence of the Dharma is that part of you that we're focusing on, the deathless, so to speak, that they talk about in the book I've showed, cannot be destroyed. It cannot die. It is not subject to the effect that you're worried about through the fear. And all we have to do at the simplest way, and the simplest way to perform Chöd in this way, is when the fear comes up, take a moment. It really takes about 1 second in which you're just there. Maybe your butthole is contracting and you're fucking terrified, whatever. But if you can just have 1 second, then this separation occurs. And that is, in a sense, an accomplishment of liberation. And this can be done by all of us. And I'm not saying that doing the Chöd practice, which is very beautiful and very powerful, should not be done. Of course it can. But we don't want to put off our liberation, our real cutting, until we have mastered such a thing and gotten all our equipment that costs $5,000 and special outfits and hats and stuff. And like that stuff is in order to support the experience that we can start with right now.
Yeah. It reminds me of the story of Milarepa, right? When he was in his cave doing practice and these demons showed up and he tried to use wrathful methods and transform himself into something big and scary. And nothing he was doing was getting these demons to leave. So finally, he decided to just offer them tea and let them stay. And then, of course, they left, right? So to me, that this is like anxiety and fear, or just these demons, right? Like they will not go away if you attack them, try to overpower them, try to have more awareness. You can sit like Zen for like 18 hours. That will not make it go away. You have to befriend it. Yeah, this is like Thich Nhat Hanh is really the master of this, like befriending your demons. You have to see it as like a baby, like this needy thing, not an enemy, something that needs something. It wants something. It's scared. It wants food, right? And that's the essence of Chöd, is we're feeding it our awareness. I see you. I care about you. I love you. And we're not being so overwhelmed by that. Machit calls all the demons are babies, right? Like that's how we can see these things we normally think, I'm gonna kick its ass, like that's my go-to, right? Like I'm gonna get more masculine and powerful and I'm gonna just destroy all this stuff. But instead, it just becoming more gentle and friendly and seeing them like little children, these emotions that come up that they just want your attention, right? That's all they want.
Yeah, these things are parts of us. And the more we can be like, you're welcome here, the more they do the helpful, they turn into helpful spirits as opposed to harmful demons that are trying to destroy us. They can be on our side, so to speak, which is very much has to do with the wrathful aspect of the protectors and a wrathful aspect of the various yidams, is befriending these parts of us. This is stuff externalized, it becomes terrifying. Brought into our thing, it becomes a friend, a helper. And fear, really, since it's absolutely all pervasive, everything from brushing your teeth at night to getting a good night's sleep, those things are entirely driven by fear. I won't be able to function tomorrow. I'll lose my job. It is all the same. Fear is really the ultimate helper, the ultimate reminder. As soon as this comes up, first you're gonna, we're coarse, so it has to be really strong. Then as we get more used to it, then it becomes more and more subtle. And earlier and earlier, smaller and smaller fears can come up and can trigger us to give it that space. The Dharma is all about this, right? It's all about letting go. Yeah. I recommend that book, Letting Go. That's an excellent book on this exact topic, and can apply these sort of secular methods to our spiritual practice. It's just about awareness. We have to be present. The more present we are, the more opportunity. If we're not present, if we're caught up and throwing punches, then the next thing you know, it's just like panic attack, just like you said.
Yeah.
Very good. We should return to this topic too. This is a big topic.
Totally. And then, like everybody's out there trying to go to the doctor. Everybody's getting diagnosed with anxiety disorder. And I'll tell you, most of that stuff does not help, because I think it's Woodrow Wilson's quote, when you're going through hell, keep going, right? These are, we got to face it. We can keep trying to suppress it, and of course, I'm not suggesting anybody don't go see their doctor, whatever they need to do. But in general, this is the nature of this human experience, and we have to find a way to go through it. We can't escape it. We have to face it one way or another. And so slowly, bit by bit, inoculating yourself to our fear of fear, I think is really, what we got to be up to. We have to get used to it, be willing to experience it in small doses. Don't start with going to the cemetery and asking for unholy terror. Start with just a moment of, it's okay, I'll let the fear be here. That even my therapist that I had back then, the one that really helped, said, the panic attacks will go away when you say, I don't care if I have any more.
Wow.
I'll have panic attacks all day, whatever, man. And he said, the moment you get to that place, and he was right. The moment I was just willing, and like I said, with that kind of Chöd attitude, like, ooh, I actually want it to show up now. Come on, this is a sign of progress. It means that my practice is working. That completely flips the script. It's this subtle tension that's causing all the problems. We have this pressure on our resistance to it.
Totally right. Yeah, it's our resistance that's the real issue. Because
Yeah.
life, as long as you have a body, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
As long as you have a body, you're going to be worried you're going to get separated from it on some level. And that's the fundamental fear. And that's going to lead to everything. That's the fear of everything.
Yeah. Well, this was a great
Super good.
conversation. I hope you all enjoy your Halloween. And tonight, if you're out there and you see people in costumes, it can remind you of impermanence. It can remind you of our willingness to experience fear. You know, that's sort of part of the point of this holiday, right? To really like embrace fears and think of it as some fun that we engage in willingly. These kind of rituals have, you know, real meaning, I think. And we can see this as a quite valuable experience. So I hope you enjoy yourself. Thank you for watching. As always, please like, share, subscribe. I really appreciate it. And we will see you soon.
Beautiful.